Hello everyone and welcome to the next podcast episode. Just adjusting my microphone presently so it's more comfortable for me, because I'm going to be here for the next half an hour or so just chatting mad beep into this here microphone. So, today's topic is going to be about coping mechanisms, and I will just put a little warning here, potentially like a trigger warning, maybe. I don't really know the lingo, but it will be getting into some pretty deep stuff at some point. Not necessarily about me personally, maybe about me personally, I don't know, but yeah, just so you're aware, the video is going to contain some stuff that isn't for those who would be upset by the sort of things you may think I'm going to be talking about. So, coping mechanisms. There are, many things that the average person needs to cope with in today's society. So, I'm just going to peel off a quick list off the top of my head here. There are relationship problems, both romantic, sexual, and platonic ones, along with familial ones, for that matter. Then there are also financial issues, be they losing a job, or just simply budgeting what you get from your job, or any allowances, etc. There are also academic problems that people have to deal with. My go-to example would be the needless amounts of homework and the terribleness that is standardized testing and the national curriculum. So, that's just some examples. So what defines a coping mechanism? I personally haven't looked up anything for this. Just, this is going to be me rambling, because that's what the name of the podcast is. So, I would say that a coping mechanism is probably like anything cathartic. For those of you who don't know, because I didn't know until a few years ago, catharsis is some ancient Greek term for something that makes you feel better, or something along those lines, according to my old English teacher. So, I would, excuse me, I have some trapped air in me today. But yes, a coping mechanism would therefore include stress eating. That's a coping mechanism. Why does it work, though? Well, eating makes you feel good. It releases the happiness hormones and chemicals from your brain that make you feel good. So that's why people eat, to feel happy. It's also something that's sort of a safety net, because in first world countries like England and America, food is readily available. Yes, most of the time cheap food, the stuff that most of us have to live off because we're all fucking poor, is really, really bad for you nutrition-wise. However, there's also some changes to that. There are healthy foods that are also cheap, they're just rarer. But yes, it's readily available to get some really terrible food for a really, really cheap price. Like, when I was a lot younger, when I was doing my paper round, I'd save up some money. Like, I'd get a tenner a week from my paper round, which was quite a lot because it was an afternoon paper round, so it was, worth less than the morning ones for some unknown reason. And, yeah, I would occasionally go to McDonald's and spend, upwards of 20 quid on food. If I was either sad, or just if I went with my friends, I would usually get a lot. But I've always been kind of sad deep down. Spoilers, if you know me, which you probably do if you're listening to this, because nobody watches my videos. Yeah, I have dark and terrible secrets within me that bum me out quite often. So, oh well. Woe is me. Beyond that, though, stress eating just makes you feel better. It's temporary, like most coping mechanisms are, but it helps you get through day to day, which is the main thing that a coping mechanism is meant to do. But that is really bad for you. There are healthier ones, like exercise. Exercise can very often be a coping mechanism. I personally have used it as a coping mechanism, but I'm very bad at using it as a coping mechanism. It doesn't come naturally to me. It's something that you've got to be in the mood. I have to be in the mood to exercise. If I'm not, I have to force myself to do it. And a coping mechanism is very rarely something that you have to force yourself to do. It might be in the beginning, but I've tried using exercise as a coping mechanism for years, and I've failed epically. So it's probably not actually a coping mechanism for me. Like, it does make you feel better, like, after you've done it, but I also feel terrible after I've done it because just my body hates me, apparently. Oh well. But yes, exercise is probably the single healthiest coping mechanism I can think of. It's entirely possible that my brother, if you know me and you know him, then don't tell him about this. And Alex, if you are watching this, sorry for using you as an example. I know I didn't ask for your permission or anything, but, this is for the internet. So you are pretty much anonymous other than the fact that your name is Alex and you're my brother. So, yeah. It's entirely possible he uses exercise as a coping mechanism. I don't talk to him about it. In all fairness, I try and avoid talking to him too much because we really don't get along. Like, we get along on certain things, so I just keep to those things when I can. As much as he likes to bring up other things, I just sort of try my best to get past them. So, exercise, coping mechanism, very healthy, can be overdone. You can exercise yourself to death, but it's rare that I reckon a coping mechanism of exercise would go that far. I'm going to say coping mechanism a lot this episode of the podcast. But, yes. So, oh my god, it's only been like 7 minutes, nearly, and we are already on our third coping mechanism. Man, I'm making progress. This is meant to last at least half an hour. Oh well. I can always ramble on about nonsense at the end, because I'm great at that. So, yes. Coping mechanism number 3. This is where it gets dark, people. Yes, this is where it gets real dark. In my opinion, this is probably both the second best and the very worst / second worst of the coping mechanisms that I'm going to be talking about today. This is work. You can throw yourself headfirst into your work and just do that. This is something that's very often shown in rom-coms and romance films, for example. Usually, this isn't me being sexist here, this is the industry, a woman will get cheated on or dumped or whatever and be like, right, that's it, I've had enough of relationships, I'm just going to become a working woman and focus on my work and nothing else. And then eventually they, just become a terrible person, and then the story arc will be revealing them becoming a better person, and realising that work isn't everything, and that relationships are actually important, even though there is the risk of getting hurt. That's, a lot of people would wonder, why is that so terrible? I would say that it is so terrible, one, because I hate the concept of sort of the necessity of work. I'm not a communist. I'm kind of an anarcho-communist, but I know it'd never work. Just like communism currently couldn't work. Yeah, feel free to let me know if it could, how, and then we can get started on that. But, yeah. I don't like the idea of the necessity of work, because there isn't a job that everyone would enjoy, and everyone should enjoy their lives. So if you throw yourself into work, yes, you may get bare bucks, big bank, loads of money, wonga, get much cash. You could be set for life. You could adopt, and then your kids could also be set for life, depending on how much you work. But then again, the working world also isn't based around, necessarily the merits of people. Working environments aren't meritocracies. They are, well, I don't actually know the correct political term for it, but they are ran on the preference of the people in charge. For example, when I worked at a undisclosed cinema, we weren't allowed to sit down whilst we were at work, which is stupid, because if there's no one there, why can't you sit down? Even if people are there, why can't you sit down? It doesn't make you look lazy, it makes you look sensible. Because it's just... we invented chairs for a reason. The cinema has like 1,200 of them. But we're not allowed to sit on any. Because we are at work. So we must look busy even if we are not. Which is stupid. And also, like, anyone who put forward an idea, the idea only went forward if the people in charge thought it would. Not if it was a good idea or not, just if the people wanted to do it. The same thing can probably be said of most workplaces. One of my favourite ones is when I worked in an undisclosed call centre. I had to make... Well, I had a quota to me of booking a certain amount of surveys worth of money per day. Well, per hour, I think it was. One day, I called literally every number that we had on the list. Nobody answered, other than maybe 4 or 5 people who said, call back during these hours, and I got told off. That's nothing to do with my fault, because I wasn't just sitting there doing nothing. I called for like 5 hours straight, phone numbers, and left voicemails. Because that was protocol. I followed everything to the T, although I did also make a lot of cups of tea, but I'm allowed to do that. Was allowed to do that, I suppose. And yet I still get told off. There's also the stupid fact of fire safety rules during workplaces. We had a fire safety book at one of my workplaces, which you had to sign in and out, so people would know if you're there for the fire. So, I always signed it when I got in the building. You know, fire arrived, I think I was meant to start at about 5:30, I think. So say I got there at, like, 5:24. Signed, 5:24. If I leave at, I think I finished at 9:30, I think it was 3 hours during the week and then 5 on the weekends. Part-time work, you know. It was, say I finished like 8:36 as well. Sign it, 8:36, just before I leave the building. Although I probably should forward it like a minute or so, just in case I'm still in the building. But then again, no, because then people would realise that on the leaving. But I got told off for signing it not when I was on the books to start work. Because I was there a little bit early, I wasn't meant to sign it until 5:30 when I was starting work, which is stupid because it's fire safety. So I'm in the building, so I should be signed into the building. Whether I'm working or not, I don't want to burn alive. Anyway, throwing yourself into work as a coping mechanism is probably not entirely healthy. I have tried it with university work and whatnot, but no. I've realised it's definitely not for me, and I would rather stress eat, to be honest. It's not something that I do really anymore, comfort eating, but I would definitely rather do that. And I'd rather just comfort eat sprouts, and I hate sprouts. Anyway, enough about that. Coping mechanism number 4. Right. So, the 4th coping mechanism is probably the one that I had to give the warning about at the beginning. It is self-harm. It is undeniably a coping mechanism. Many people have used it as one, including myself, though I don't like talking about it to my family at all. My brother is aware it happened. My mum has many suspicions it happened. Yeah. So, self-harm. This is one that has much more of a serious debate to it than the previous coping mechanisms did. It has some serious connotations. For one, scars and the potential of dying, and of course suicide is technically self-harm, and that's but that's not so much a coping mechanism as a I can't cope escape mechanism, I suppose. But yeah, so self-harm is terrible. Like, it is just terrible. And as far as I can tell, the main reason it happens is because usually due to emotional issues that you can't understand or deal with, that are so strong you feel like you have no control over them. And when something like that has occurred, you just want something you have control over, and any issue that you can solve. If you have a cut, you can bandage it, it will heal. If you have, like, a bruise, it will heal, you just don't keep poking it. If you feel pain, it's tangible, you know where it's coming from, you know why it's there, you know it will go away. With certain other things you don't. Unrequited love. Will that ever go away? Maybe, maybe not. Will they ever change their mind and it become just love? Maybe, maybe not. Feelings of intense depression. You have no real control over, though to an extent you do have control over, like, depression. I'm not getting into that. Like, you don't actually have a great deal of control over whether you're depressed or not. You can't just choose to not be. You can't just cheer up. It's not a thing you can do. So you have no control over that. The pain you would. And I've always been of the opinion that there's only so much that a person can concentrate on at once. As the Hello Internet podcast, which is my favourite podcast, I don't know if I've mentioned that on this podcast before, has said in their episode 4 light bulbs, that if I remember I will link in the description, they have the 4 light bulbs theory thing. I don't know where they got it from. I think they got it from a book. But yeah, you have 4 light bulbs in your life. I mean, it's split much more than that, but just as a generalization, there's 4. Work, family, health, and friends / other. That's pretty much it, I think. But you only have a certain amount of power at once. So you can either have them all on 25%, or you can have 3 of them on 33.33 recurring, and then 1 on 0.00 recurring 1%. Or you can have 1 on 100% and the rest just off. And so on and so forth. And I personally think that if you split this, to take it to a greater degree, you have in your health, you've got mental health and physical health. And you have power diverted to the health bulb. But inside that bulb, there's the 2 bulbs. If you take away something from the physical health, to an extent, it will go towards the mental health instead. So, like, it's a really bad analogy for this specifically, because I know people who have, like, terminal illnesses and stuff often get much worsened, like, mental health, obviously, but there is some sort of correlation between self-harming and at least a repression, even if not a solving, though I would imagine that it is actually a slight, like, slackening of, rather than just repression of, mental issues. This is not me advocating self-harm. I've done it. I know it's a bad move. Just like Hagrid put his dick in the owl, do not put the knife in the yew. Because it's a bad move. But there is, I'm just saying, I know why people do it. And it is a coping mechanism. Just it's probably one of the worst ones. I know I'm probably gonna, if people who don't know me watch this, gonna get, like, hate talk from the fact that I've said that throwing yourself into work is as bad as slicing your flesh open. Well, that's why I said that throwing yourself into work is either worst or second worst, because this is undeniably like the worst one, but throwing yourself into work can be just slightly less bad than this one, in my personal opinion. This is a personal thing here. I'm not saying objectively it's worse, I'm just saying for me personally, it is nearly as bad, if that makes sense to you. But there are other coping mechanisms that are also unhealthy, like alcoholism. I don't know whether or not people see alcoholism as absolutely terrible coping mechanism. Personally, I do, because one, it doesn't really work. You just get more problems. That's almost undeniable. If they were financial problems, you can't afford anything because you're spending your money on booze. If they're relationship problems, you're not you when you're drunk. Which, to an extent, isn't true, obviously. Even if you're drunk, you can't get away with a crime because you are still responsible. And I would assume that's probably because you put yourself into that position to get drunk in the first place. Moving past that, though, there's also the fact that if it was a work issue, you're not going to have a job if you turn up pissed. Unless it's like a circus or something, I don't know. Then, or there's a professional alcoholic. I don't know if that's a thing. It's probably at least some person must have done it. Then drugs is another, other drugs is another coping mechanism. Terrible again. Even if those other drugs, because alcohol is a drug, are just like nicotine. Nicotine. Smoking just tobacco. Bad. Very bad. Terrible. I know a lot of people do it. My best friend does it, and it upsets me. It always has. It probably always will. When they first said they did it, I was like, you do you, but so long as you know all the risks and stuff, and you're making an informed decision, you do you. But I would probably be a happier person if they would stop. But I know they don't watch my videos, so I can talk about them all I want. But I know some of the people who do watch my videos smoke, so just stop, okay? Just don't do it. I know it's hard for you, but just don't. Anyway, I would also have to say that other drugs are bad coping mechanisms, such as marijuana and cocaine and heroin. All of these things, terrible coping mechanisms. Personally, I am an advocate for the legalization and just general use of marijuana, but it's a terrible coping mechanism because if you overdo it, it will fuck with your mind. My cousin is an excellent example of that, I would argue, but then again, he's always been a bit of a weird one. But then again, I also don't know when he started smoking, so there's that. Regardless, I think I've ran out of coping mechanisms to list. Art, of course. This technically probably would fall under the work one, but not necessarily. You can be someone who enjoys making art, or artistic projects like music, or theatre, and not do it as a job or as a form of work, just as a hobby. So throwing yourself into hobbies, let's go with that. That is another healthy one. Because exercise is kind of a hobby, I suppose, so I guess that could be lumped into this, but it is better for you than focusing on art. But if you focus on just a hobby, like learning a language or something, doing that as a stress relief can be wonderful. Oh my god, how do I forget game? Oh my god, there's so many. Right, so we're going to do hobbies as a thing, then we're just going to go for gaming separately, even though I know it comes under hobbies, or work, or to an extent exercise if you're using VR, kinetic sensing stuff. But besides that, we have hobbies, the topic of the last podcast, there we go, words, oh, love them. So, yes, if you learn a language, every step you take... but every advancement you get in learning that language, you will get a release of just satisfaction through you. It's like, yes, I can now count up to 50 rather than 10. This is wonderful. That is an excellent thing to do, and then you can become bilingual or polylingual or whatever. On top of which, there's also the fact that as hobbies go, art you can sell or hang and just be like, I made that. Tell your friends about it, tell the story. And art is also very expressive. Poetry, for example, you can write your feelings. You don't have to deal with them in real life, you can deal with them in fiction. D&D is great for that, as I mentioned in the last episode. So, let's go on to gaming. Specifically video gaming, because other games, they do work, but, you don't want to play Monopoly for catharsis very often, really. You're probably just gonna get mad. So, video gaming. Is it, the coping mechanism? Hell yeah. You can spend far too long doing it, and I think we all know people who do. I, for one, probably am not one of those people, but very nearly. I'm borderline spend too much time playing video games. But some of the video games I play are for the YouTube channel, so... you can't really blame me too much. You can just blame me a little bit. But yeah, it is not terribly healthy as far as coping mechanisms go. But, as people have pointed out in the past, if you say, play Fable 2, it's a great game, and it has a morality system. In it, you can do all of the cruel things that you would love to do to the people in your life that you despise, because we all have people in our lives we despise, whether we admit it or not. And, yeah. So you can go around, and you can go into Bowerstone Market, and just kill a dude, because you don't like how they speak or whatever. And then, boom, guards. You can just kill the guards, slaughter them. More guards, kill them. Stronger guards, kill them. More stronger guards. And then you can just keep doing that until eventually you get bored or overpowered. And the fun part of Fable 2 is you can't actually be overpowered. You can just get knocked out, but you get back up again with a scar. So you can just keep going again. You can just keep doing that until you feel like you've got it out of your system. It is a healthy way to vent frustration. Just like punching or kicking a punch bag is. That's pretty much how I exercise, other than skipping, because my breathing still sucks. So, yeah. Anyway, I thoroughly enjoy recording these. I think I'm out of coping mechanisms at this point to talk about, because hobbies is a big one, like writing both fiction, non-fiction, poetry, music, art is a thing you can also do with drawing, digitally or by hand, in many different styles. You can paint, you can spray paint, water paint, oil paint, you can do crayons, you can do coal, you can do sketching or straight lines, you can do dotterlism. So many things just fall under that creative branch. Watching TV, though, that's also, binge watching is a coping mechanism that I had also forgotten of. Thank you, No Game, No Life, the DVD, for being on a shelf next to my TV, so I saw that and was like, yes, that's a good coping mechanism. Watching stuff, it's probably on par with gaming health-wise, probably slightly less because you don't get the problem-solving aspect thrown in. Your brain is not as active during that period, it's just sort of sat there. But, whatever. Anyway, I don't know what the next podcast is going to be about. I never do. I haven't actually uploaded any of them yet, so there's that. Oh no, I uploaded the first one, didn't I? Oh yeah, and I uploaded the second one, the last one, just today. But who knows, maybe I'll get more feedback. Because this is the only series I've actually ever gotten positive feedback on in my 3 and a bit years on the channel so far. So, there's that. Oh well, I am nearly at 2% of the way to earning money off the YouTube channel. Did you know that? Probably not. Do you care? Probably not. Do I care? A little bit, yeah, because, it'd be nice to get something back for all of this work. I just would prefer, I would prefer to have people watch them and say they enjoyed them than to earn any money, to be honest. Because, I have ways of getting money should I really need it. If I need to, I can get a job. I'd really rather not, and I think I have a few workarounds, but if I have to, I can get a job. I just want people to watch my stuff and enjoy it, really. Because at the moment I just do it for me, which is fine. It's one of a very few things that I do for me. But if people watch it and enjoy it, then it'd be nice. Maybe that's what I'll talk about next episode. The motivation behind what I do. Yeah, that'd be nice. No promises, I'll probably forget, but still. Until then, though, I will catch you cats on the flip-flop. Bye-bye!